faculty member in bioengineering, nanoengineering, material science and engineering, and the Center for Circadian Biology. Dr. Rangamani has training in both engineering and biological sciences, and her research group develops theoretical and computational models of cellular processes. Their long-term research goal is to build comprehensive models of cellular behavior, particularly at the interface of signal transduction and membrane mechanics.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. All right, so today is a workshop. Yes. So today is a workshop, so I'm expecting that there'll be a little bit more active thinking, so I'm not going to talk at you guys. And much of this, so I'll start with telling you a little bit of history and background. So you guys know the CV. You've seen, some of you have seen me in the interfaces program. I've been a faculty at the interfaces program for 10 years now. But I think something that people usually don't know of me is I had kids in grad school. I had my son in second year of grad school, and I defended my thesis proposal. It was in a medical school, about 6 weeks after he was born. And I started my postdoc with a 3-year-old and a 3-week-old. So I think I have street cred, if you will, to talk about some of this. So when I came to UC San Diego to start my faculty position in 2014, I had a second grader and a pre-K kid. So I actually have one kid who's sick at home right now, if you believe it or not, one who's collecting college applications this week. So, you know, life goes on. So I think the question that I have asked myself since grad school is, how do you do all of it, right? I mean, I'm an immigrant. I don't have family here. Once a grad student, so 4 at some point. So how do you actually do all of this? And so I'm going to challenge you guys. If it's, I'm not going to make you uncomfortable, but I'm going to make you think. That's my goal here, okay? So I did ask you guys to bring your IDPs, but because I actually want you to think about, when I say, what are your most valuable resources? What do you think about? How much time do you have each week? So it turns out we all have the same 168 hours. 24 times 7. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Okay? 168 hours. You can count it. And given increasing lifespans, 4,000 weeks. Also pretty well known. We are scientists, we like data. So the question is, what do you do with that? But more importantly, we know this is finite, so this can either be very scary and you say, crap, I don't want to be doing whatever it is that I'm doing right now in these like 4,000 weeks or this 1 week. Or you can use that to action, right? Everything is fleeting, everything is finite. So whatever we are in right now. And I think we've always talked about resources in terms of time, but I think more importantly, and as somebody who's taught large undergrad classes for 10 years and sat in seminars in the back and observed the audience change, I would say that attention is probably your most valuable resource. And I'm going to give you, this time, data to prove it. 47 seconds is what I can hold your attention before you switch tabs. This is data. And I know that as students, you're in the most learning rich phase of your life. I also know there are competing demands on your attention. As somebody of my generation who grew up with a landline, there was only one phone, whether you had to call your friend, and somebody of my children's generation whose phones are always pinging and dinging. Doesn't matter whether they're in class. But a very good example was back in my time as a grad student. I don't know if you have heard of these things called calling cards. You had to have a calling card to call internationally to call your parents. So you only called one person. I only called my parents once a week because phone calls were expensive. Compare that to a 3 times a day WhatsApp that happens, same distance, same parents. So technology has lowered those boundaries. But we have gone from a time when your friends and family did not ping you in the 9 to 5 workspace to everybody pings each other all the time. You know, the only friends who don't ping me, they're actually in their 80s. I'm like, oh, you must be at work. They're not going to text you right now. Everybody else, it's a free for all. And this actually becomes a big problem when you're trying to do focused work. It's the demands on your attention. And this person has a book by name Attention Span, which got a lot of popular press last year. And Gloria Mark is a professor of psychology at UCR1. And I'm trying to see if we as a community can bring her here to talk about how our attention is our most valuable resource and being distracted. But here you are, and you have to work your way through this with 47 seconds. And interestingly, a lot of this attention distraction does not come from your lab mate talking to you. It used to be when I was in the lab, it was, oh, can you just stop talking so I can finish reading this? Now it's coming because of the thing that's buzzing on your arm, in your pocket, and the 50 tabs that you have. And it is important for you to know, you already know this is being monetized. Attention economy is the most valuable economy. This is being monetized. So you have the knowledge economy, which you guys are a part of, and you go in TA, and then your student is, you're trying to explain the solution to the problem set so they can do well on their final week, and then your student is like, listen, I'm prepared. So that is where we are. So how do we use that knowledge to our advantage? So, couple of disclaimers, it's only partially data driven. Originally, a lot of this talk was anecdotal and was geared towards junior faculty. Now it's getting more and more data driven. And this is something I'm very passionate about because it does affect our student community, our postdoc community. But I'm going to make a request that since we are being recorded, scratch the second line. Let's not share things that we don't want to be in a public domain. Or maybe we can tell Kelly, please don't post us on YouTube and delete the recording.
It's going on YouTube.
Okay,
Sorry.
then don't say anything that, but we can do that all. So here's something that I was a little surprised that nobody really knew. Most of us do this because we really, really, really care. There are very, very few people I know who are on this campus or any other campus because they didn't know what to do with their lives, and this seemed like a good stopgap. There, we care. Now, I'm gonna ask you what you care about and expect you to articulate it eventually. But what is it that drives you? What's the passion, right? And this business of making a difference, when you're a student and you're TAing, you solve the problem and they get it and their eyes light up, it's totally worth it. The first time your experiment works, that's why we are here. This was never a high-paying job. And for the most part, in higher education, the PhD is the only advanced degree that you get a stipend to go with. A JD, an MD, you pay, an MBA, you pay. This is the only degree where you get a living wage. We're not going to discuss that, to go with. And so you get a chance to make an unparalleled difference to the world. That is today, in this moment, that is being questioned, that is being challenged. So as young scientists, you also have to deal with the constant anxiety of what your role is. And there's really only one piece of advice I have for you. Hunker down and focus. You can doom scroll all day long, or hunker down and focus and do what you're really good at. And let the elders fight the fights. We can't lose the whole generation. So this is very hard because I'm asking you guys to really, really focus. And so this is perhaps timely, is that there are going to be gazillion career milestones. There's going to be Senate exams, there's going to be fellowships, there's going to be last minute stuff, there's going to be that person who didn't write your letter. But we have to remember why we got here. We came here because we wanted to make a difference. And so then this is the problem. We get to decide how it goes. You can come to me and say, I don't want to work on this project. The likelihood that I'll say, yeah, sounds good. What do you want to work on is pretty high. You get to decide this. There are very few degrees where you actually get to decide what the curriculum is. You get to go and take a course in machine learning if that's what you want to do. And so I want to start backwards. And if you want Kelly at any time to let our students grab lunch, we can pause, but I'll put this up. I'll keep talking if you guys want to grab lunch. But I'm gonna share with you what happens. Go for it.
I'm gonna pause the recording for just a quick.
You're a student, all of your PhD students.
I'm a junior faculty.
I know that. I had to, yeah, I know that. But I think I wanted to get you guys to backwards. So I get a phone call. You applied for a job. I'm your reference in some capacity, right? I'm the interfaces training ground, something. I've worked with you, I've written a paper. What questions do you think that call is asked? They're standard questions. You guys have to talk, I'm not talking.
They're productive, are they efficient, how well do they work with their peers?
Are their graphs labeled? Are their presentations made well? How do they respond to deadlines? How do they respond to stress? How do they respond when their project fails? Can they finish in a timely manner? They are looking for performance evaluation. Now, if you have graded exams, you have done that too, because courses have rubrics. Right? You have to do this to get an A. And somebody decided that for you. But there are, if you are looking for industry positions, these are actually pretty standard HR questions. And they ask me this every single time. How clean were their group meeting presentations? And I kind of went, why do you care about group meeting presentations? Oh, because that shows how much they care. So they're looking for people who are passionate, they're looking for finishers. They also are looking for what one broadly, vaguely calls maturity, however that is, right? So I was very surprised when they wanted. Now, if you're going for a postdoc position, then it's, depends on what's in the recommendation letter, which you will likely never see. So that's a little bit more opaque, right? Because somebody wrote your recommendation letter and then you wonder, why didn't I ever hear? Or why did I hear? So these are what you're actually writing. When we are talking about the performance review, we are talking about productivity. And often we tend to look at productivity in terms of numbers, not necessarily. I have one phenomenal paper. We talked earlier in group meeting in my group this morning about new, novel, and impactful. Or you can have a series of body of work that make a difference. But ultimately, this is what happens after. So my goal is to get you guys to get there and get those positive reviews that you're looking for, whatever your career may be. So exercise. What are your goals for your PhD? I'm gonna call out the names. I know if you guys don't say. So here's the thing. I'll tell you this. If Professor Makalak is on your thesis committee, he will always ask you this in the Senate exam. And I keep telling people this, and they're like, what? So what is the thesis statement you plan to defend? Anyone? We can do a take two of this in fall, when you guys talk about this. But it's a really good exercise, because what I'm trying to do is give you the ownership. You went to whichever PI's lab you went to because you were excited about something that you read from them, or you liked a vibe. But you're not first year students anymore. I'm happy to share the slides, by the way, if anybody wants them after. But what is the discovery statement? That's what you open your slides, your thesis title, and then you say, in this thesis, I will defend the statement. There used to be exams, there didn't used to be celebrations. They're like most of us didn't know we were passing. 15 years ago, I did not know I was passing. Now everybody knows the champagne's waiting outside. So what are the skills you seek to gain? We talk a lot about technical skills. I can do this experiment, I can do this calculation, I can do machine learning. But in the performance evaluation, you know what I'm asked? Can they think critically? Nobody really is asking me if you can do machine learning or physics-inspired neural networks. Can they communicate? Can they tell me what's important? And I have a little tips for you on how you can do this every time you read a paper if you're interested. And then this is a question. Tell me how long you think your PhD should take. Go for it, Kyle. Speak to your advice. Tell me.
So first, it depends on
what field you're in, but I'll say,
For you,
I mean. 5 years seems like a reasonable amount. Keep too long and you get stagnant, too short and you don't spend enough time thinking critically.
5 years, okay.
Since I'm growing more biosample, I'm thinking between 5 and 6.
Okay, so it is field specific,
Say 5-ish.
5-ish. So 5 to 6 is fairly common for things that are on the interface of engineering and roughly life sciences. 7 is not uncommon for physics. Because Newton did a lot of things in physics. So the bar for new, novel, and impactful is different in each field. Okay, so roughly 5 years. So now let's work backwards. Tell me this. How long do you think this should take? Okay, PhD is 5 years. How many of you have written fellowship applications or writing one? How long do you think it should take? If you haven't written one, give me a number.
Oh, I'm writing one now.
Okay, and how's it going?
It's going well.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm ahead of schedule, I think, but it takes forever. I would think I've been working on this for the first one that I wrote like took months.
6 months?
Yeah,
That's what Catherine says.
6 months?
yeah.
Catherine put up a chat that said several months.
Yeah.
So it usually takes 6 months. So if you're not writing a fellowship application, but you're writing a Senate exam document that you want to pass with flying colors, it takes about. I'll tell you why in a minute. How long do you think a paper should take? The writing part, I'm not talking about the doing the experiments.
Are you talking about first draft or like the whole thing?
The first draft.
2 weeks.
Okay, what are you doing in those 2 weeks? Are you doing nothing else?
Yeah.
You're basically writing your full work time.
It's like, if you have all the data already, then
So let's talk about the data. How long do you think a figure layout should take? We did one figure in group meeting for Danny today, so.
the figure,
Yeah,
depends on the figure, depends on the paper.
but then I'm trying to show you they're all related. So how you can actually get a paper written in 2 weeks. Is if you actively think about your experiment design each time you go. And find that balance between having it organized versus pivoting. And if you don't do wet lab experiments and you do simulations, this holds as well. If you randomly change parameters and hope to God something else will happen, it won't. Doing the same experiment over and over again, expecting a different outcome is not scientific method. So those that actually, so I could tell you that, so I recently did this myself a few years ago. I decided to write a paper doing the simulations myself because I kind of felt like I was becoming more managerial and less researchy. And so, reading the literature and finding a good problem is the one that takes the longest. Right? And if you don't have an advisor, I mean, that's also how the system works. The advisor kind of guides you in the direction so you're not flailing. So it can take about 6 months if you actually know how to do it. And once you do that, designing the experiment can take months. You know, what is the question I'm asking? You gotta figure out what you're asking. Then you have to say, what is your control? Even in simulations, you need a control, something that will not change and you compare against. And then you have to say, am I allowed to do that? Is that reasonable in the context of what I'm doing? Oh, wait, this doesn't exist in this species. This whole thing was like a bad idea. Go back to. It can happen. And then you find out, you do all of this and you find out the microscope's not available for weeks on end, or I don't know, power went out. So these things, everything here takes a lot longer than you think, but there are things that you can do to make it efficient, which brings us to what prevents you from achieving the 2-week paper turnaround. What are the barriers? So when we say resistance mechanisms, what are the barriers? So tell me external ones. The world is falling apart. That's a pretty darn good resistance mechanism right now. So I have been talking quite a bit with program officers at NSF and NIH, and by God, they are trying, and therefore we owe it to them to not follow them. There are other people, so for everyone who knows who's struggling, there's someone who has it worse. That has kept me very grounded. Whatever my problems are, someone's just got it a whole lot worse. So let's put that in perspective. All right, so when the world is not falling apart, okay, I don't know, some good meaning lab made kind of contaminated your culture. Happened. Or, somebody forgot to change the oxygen tank or the nitrogen tank or something and your experiment failed. So you build in backup time. Or the power went out and your server kind of fried. Amongst the many weird texts I received is one where somebody sent me this was not supposed to go in bad and now both of them melted and what do I do? I'm really sorry. So those things can happen. Now, you may be in a field where the external mechanisms are less because you do computational. But that doesn't mean there are no external resistance. There are barriers, there are external challenges. But again, if you're a student or a postdoc, most of the time, you are protected from those in a way that faculty are actually not. Right? What are your internal resistance mechanisms?
Motivation, tiring, not understanding it, having to figure
Grad
out
school can sell you motivation.
what's up.
Grad school cannot sell you motivation.
Right.
I'm not in the business of selling it, or anything. That's a big ask, right? Because I also have to go and take care of all the other things and other people in my life I have to take care of. I can motivate my kids to do well in school. But you guys are going to be my peers to the same degree in like 3 or 4 years. And again, every faculty is different on this. But I'm just saying what it is. So motivation, you're tired, you're maybe burned out. You want to accomplish these things this week and then you kind of fell behind and then that kind of demotivated you. Or you talk to somebody in your group who said, oh, how hard they were working and things didn't come out, and then fear is a very valid young adult reason to have. Yes,
And also had bureaucracy or administration where people just don't send you a response to a question you have or we have just
Absolutely.
symbols or things that can just hold up stuff for months.
we can have a whole different conversation on that.
But the emotion that makes me feel is powerless, so that can be this.
Yes. And when you feel helpless and powerless, it really kind of paralyzes you in a way that nothing else does. So to you, I would offer another helpless emotion that has actually helped me get past that level of, I deal with a lot more bureaucracy, I hope, than you do, just, I hope. A completely helpless situation is having an unwell terminally ill child. Nothing else supersedes that in my personal view. So that context helps me say, okay, whatever this is, at least it is not bad. And now you have to see where this comes from, right? It helps me get up and say, all right, fine, I have to now send you 50 more emails. At least my kids are okay. It is a mechanism by which you find perspective that can actually show you how really, really bad it can get. And that, I'm not saying it's for everybody, but it just helps me cope. Because I deal with a lot of things. I get it. But also something to think about is if you're feeling helpless and powerless, it's always good to talk to mentors. It doesn't always have to be your advisor. Set yourself 15 minutes to vent, and then, find what you can. I'll tell you guys this, I run a group, a fairly large one. I can really only control my own behavior. That's all I can control. Like, the idea that I have power over anything else is like the world's other biggest myth. But yes, it can be very frustrating, particularly if you're a trainee trying to meet some timelines. I will tell you resistance mechanisms I have encountered. Usually it has to do with really not paying attention to some detail, because what it does for me And I'm trying to meet your timeline, you give me a paper and I wanna meet your timeline. Every faculty I talk to says first they do the English language editing, then they do the scientific editing, and then they all wonder why the hell they're your English teacher. And then we all wonder why we have to do this in the day of large language models, Grammarly and whatever. So you can help yourself with technology quite a bit. Nobody really wants to find it. And it actually doesn't give us any great pleasure like that. Other things, going back to the figure we were talking about, there's the data itself and then there's the plotting. And how many of you have gone to seminars where somebody puts up something and says, oh, I'm sorry, the label's too long, too small? How many of you have been there? And how many of you have wondered, why don't you say you're sorry? Why don't you just fix it in the first place if you're sorry? Every time. I'm glad. So you can spend half an hour writing a script, they'll make your plots, done. Right, it's done all the way through your thesis. The other thing that can help a little bit with the powerlessness issue is understand policy, understand what your rights are, understand what your privileges are. I've actually been surprised that how few people actually read the contracts or read the various requirements. A good example is, oh, I'm supposed to TA, but hey, I bought my tickets, can I like not, no. Right, so work with the ideas that go so that we can help you reduce that. So I would, for faculty, I usually say, understand what your department tenure requirements are, university tenure requirements are, get the policy, work with the policy, and we do have all of that in writing. So these are like simple ways that you can work on that, but I think a bigger picture vision is to have a plan for where you want to go. How many of you have a plan? How many of you have a IDP? You all have to have an IDP, you're all like on an NIH funded training ground. This is. How many of you revisit that IDP every quarter? So it's a good idea to do that, because the IDP also has the skills you've learned and the skills you plan to learn. And I would say that one of the ways that has worked for me is a good example, right? I'll use running, you want to run a half marathon at the end of June 30th. Spring quarter ends, April 1st, it starts. 13 weeks. That's 13 weeks. What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve in there? And I think for me, it is usually, I'd really rather not work on Saturdays. It's been that way. I have kids in grad school. I don't want to be able to work. I'd really rather not work on Saturdays. I find my life much better if I spend a little bit of time on Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening getting back into gear and taking care of things so that Monday I'm pure. That is how things go. And that may be for your sample prep, that may be, getting the reading done. But also thinking about what is the project you're working on, what is the project you want to work towards. How much of your week goes in group meeting, you all presumably have assigned lab tasks that you need to take care of, maintenance, if you're mentoring undergrads, and things like that. How many of you get frustrated when your undergrads don't show up on time or what do you do with it?
I don't know how to have these conversations. It's just, they show up on their own time. And then they do what I ask, but it's just like, on like a Saturday or Sunday. Okay.
So an actionable item for you would be to say, look, I plan my week ahead. I want to be here for you. I want to help you succeed. The likelihood that if you show up half hour before I'm going for my long run and that I'm going to stop to help you. So what you probably, being the good natured person that you are, end up doing is canceling your long run and helping. Yeah. So we can talk about it. You have to set boundaries. I want to be able to help you, but I'm not available. And I actually never tell people what I'm doing. I'm not available. So tell me when you're coming and we'll work together. I know that time doesn't good. And that's how you instill professionalism.
Catherine said that she tells him how much time she's got.
Yeah. So usually a lot of what happens is, and professors do this too, I'll show you some examples of how this is. So I want to give you a little bit of ideas on how you can, maybe you could try this for spring and then come back and revisit and see how it went for you guys. Think about what you want to do each week. Big goal. I want to do this experiment, find your microscope time, reserve it, however that works in your goal. And then see what worked and what didn't work. Maybe somebody just completely pulled the plug on the microscope, terrible idea. And then check it to see if it's working so you can adjust, which also means you should leave a little bit of breathing room for errors, internal or external. And then make your goals like very finite and very living. We'll talk a little bit about watching for holes in your time. So this can be excruciating because you have to be honest and like completely like you are with your data. But it can be a big growth opportunity if you actually do this. So all the things, right? All the things, somewhere in there is work. We struggle with this. How many of you get all the exercise you think you should? Or you want to? How many of you get enough sleep? How many of us are perpetually tired? How many of us have health challenges we may or may not want to share? Most of us. Then how do you hold a full-time job? It's a real world challenge. Some of us take care of 2 generations. Happens, right? Kids get old, parents get old in different countries, no less. So with that, I think it's, this doesn't apply, but this applies to all of us. Oh my God, the meetings. Right? This is what research consists of. You do the reading, you do the designing, you come back and analyze. This doesn't apply. A lot of you do this, you're wonderful people, but we can talk about how much of your time goes there. If you want to write a paper, if you want to broadly do research, I want you to actually think about how long it takes you to read a paper. If you guys are interested, we can actually have a little session on how to read a paper. I know you know how to read a paper in your field, but how long it takes you to read papers and do all the bits and pieces. If you have a fellowship, you're doing this and someone's not responding to you. I guarantee you this. Postdocs or students who have fellowship, because it comes directly to you, you are dealing with this. Otherwise, we are dealing with the ground stuff. If you're doing TAing, this partially applies because you have to help with preparing homeworks and grading, and you really don't know how long all of this takes. That's that. How many of you do this? Why is it a vacation? I refuse to do this. You need a letter from me, I'm going on vacation. Sorry, I'm going on vacation. We didn't used to do this before Zoom. We didn't used to do this before Skype. How many of us like, oh, I'm going to be at this conference, but I'll Zoom with you if necessary? I'm surprised you're tired. So I would say partly where I'm getting at is that you treat time like money. You treat your attention like it's money. None of you would buy eggs right now, so why would you waste your time and money and your attention? Nobody would buy eggs. So it is your most valuable resource. Your singular goal here in this program is to make a new discovery, produce new science, yes, alongside being a good citizen and all of that. So if things come in the way of making that scientific discovery, you have to have a reconciliation because nobody is going to give you more time. And that reconciliation need not, I understand you're trainees, so you do not have the sort of independent authority to always do that, but that is a conversation that can be had with your other team members or your PI. But if you don't have that research part, the rest of it, so-and-so is a good citizen, it only goes so far, right? So I really miss being a postdoc, not a grad student. It was nice to have a PhD. But this is kind of like what your day looks like. But what I really miss is this. I cannot tell you what a wonderful feeling it is to focus and work on one thing at a time. Which quickly goes away when you're a postdoc because you're expected to broaden your breadth and, show more independence and stuff like that. So this one I wrote for fun, please don't be offended. But read it. It's good fun. It might be dated, I don't even think those social media things hold. How many of you identify with a day like that? And on this campus, you can go to so many seminars. So what did you achieve that day? Amazing. Seminar, listen to your advisor talk about strategic planning, it's Friday, 2 o'clock, man. It's true in my group today. This is my day. Every time I go to that topic, someone's there, right? Someone I know. This side of campus, that side of campus doesn't matter. This is actually completely true. Ooh, cool, let's go down that rabbit hole. So I should admit that at some point when I started digging more into these, I completely got rid of social media. I figured people who were my friends would find. I'm not giving anybody advice on what to do. I figured people who were my true friends who had my phone number and would find me, and I really did not care what everybody else in their community was. I've been much better off for it, right? But, yeah. But that's basically what I did was the number of letters that get written. It's true, because we care, right? So, but I didn't really do any scholarly work. I did a lot of work, but I didn't do any scholarly work. So there is the real world that is outside the academic world. Goals are defined, projects are scrapped quickly, there are no. And I built this a little bit after talking to former graduate students from our programs who are now working in industry in the local area. Projects get scrapped quickly if they're not making progress. You have to show results, carrots and sticks are tangible, you get your stock options or your investments or you don't. And hierarchy is well defined. You can get laid off with minimal notice, also true. Right, so I don't know if that last point is true, but yeah. So what can you do? This is just an old person talking to you guys. So please, when you're working work, like I walk by, I know who has like 50 screens open. It's actually no secret. So when you're working, just work. I find that I'm really unable to read very well when I'm at my computer. So I just print something out. Right? Whatever that works for you. I use a timer and I know when I get tired. I know you know by now what your day looks like and when you're able to do your best work and when you're fading and doing crap. So I have my email time. Kelly knows this. I will not write emails first thing in the morning. The answer is still the same at 4 p.m. and hopefully by then it has resolved itself and I don't need to do anything. Right? So block off. If your group uses Slack, you can update your status and say, writing. You don't have to be, don't go missing in action. But this I think is something that I'm seeing both as a classroom instructor for 200 students, they're there and you're talking to them, you're lecturing them, you've prepared this lecture, a 1-hour seminar on this important topic. And you look up and they're smiling at their students and you're like, geez, write down the notes, right? And you see this in seminar, you prepare this seminar and you're talking and people are looking at things. Most of us can tell the quality. You can tell the quality by now. It's very obvious. So the multitasking is not a thing. It's the world's biggest lie. It's not a thing. If you're gonna go take a break, go sit in the sunlight, take a 15-minute break, watch all the videos you want. Set a time in, take the break, have a good time, come back. But I think what I would like you to think about is what are your very specific goals? We could do this by example. Let's say you have an experiment you need, a paper that you want to read, not a paper, that's too narrow. I want to learn about the biophysics of axon initial segment. Okay, that's a goal. That's like everything and then bucket of neuroscience. So make it specific for me. GM, make it specific for me. Understand why the axon initial segment acts as a diffusion barrier. Okay, so that narrows down the papers I read. There are 345 papers on this topic. You can't be reading all day. I'm gonna read 50 papers. How do you choose the 50 papers? Combination of most recent and most cited. Most cited either because controversial or in part, I don't know. Most recent, most cited. Action oriented, okay, I'm gonna read these 50 papers. What are you gonna get out of it? So you come to me and you say you read a paper. Say, okay, so what? I'm gonna write a little, for each paper, I should be able to summarize in 1-2 sentences what was learned. 50 papers later, I have a 100-sentence summary. I have a state of the field. Is that realistic? Absolutely. Is reading 3,000 papers realistic? Probably not. I'm going to do this in 1 week. Week you realize you only read 30 papers, or actually you read 50 papers in, 3.5 days and great. Have you done this kind of thing before? You've done this in undergrad. You got a quarter, you got a term, you had a course to finish, but somebody made you the syllabus. Somebody told you what needed to be done. What happened was that the guardrails went off and then we didn't know how to do this in a time-bound manner. So this is, but there's always a time limit, right? The other thing that I do is I take my to-do list, which is a big nebulous thing that still lives in a notebook because I get great deep satisfaction out of crossing things out of my notebook. No check mark on an app gives me that sensation. Every Sunday, 8:30 p.m. is a come to calendar moment. It is. Because that's when you go, have this review for nature metabolism to do. I have this talk to give for interfaces. When am I going to do all this? Definitely not, hopefully not Thursday night, because then there'll be a typo or two and somebody will spot it. This is something that you guys can do. But then you have to know how long anything takes. So I have a very interesting and a very introspective exercise. For 1 week, carry a bunch of Post-its in your pocket. Mark your time in 15-minute intervals and see where it goes. You don't have to share this with anybody. You'll actually find out how much bureaucracy, as our friend here said this. There is a lot of bureaucracy, then you learn to build into it. That's what my Sunday looked like. I usually wake up fairly early. I read like 3 newspapers because I like doing that. Then there's the house. Then there's, that Sunday happened to be, I don't know which year it was, 2020. I was like administrative work. And then these are all the things I like doing. I like exercising a lot. I'm learning to play the piano as an adult. I suck at it. Because I didn't grow up learning Western classical music. So it's very hard for me. I love knitting. Most weeks, none of that gets done. There's always the house, there's friends, there's family, there's sleep. I don't even, that's organization, there's just like stuff. Every time I kind of feel what Kyle described, tired, burned out of sorts, not being productive. You have to take a step back and actually see, data helps me a lot. Data helps me a lot. And then you realize you actually spent a lot of time that week doing things. And maybe that's over. And you get a better sense of how much buffer to build or how much lead time to give. And then when you put your whole thing in slots, so there's a defense, there's a meeting. And so I basically will block off my time for writing. I'm sorry?
Choosing goals and stuff.
Oh, yes, I do work with children a lot. And then I have to write this thing. Somebody wanted to meet. Oh, look, there's a strategic planning thing that overlapped, can't be. And then this goes in the calendar because then I can't tell anybody that. I mean, I have to be true. If I have to be true to you guys, I got to be true to myself. If I'm not going to stand you up, I can't stand myself up. You shouldn't stand yourself up. You're only responsible for yourself. And because I have collaborators in Singapore, I have to meet with them there. So those open slots are opportunities to be productive. And then we have a few more minutes. I can pause here and take any feedback on this stuff, but Kelly wanted me to talk to you guys about managing up. Questions? It's hard, isn't it? It's hard. I'm telling you, the post thing really works. When I see data, I'm like, oh, it was actually not as bad. I actually slept really well, and that changes how tired I feel because I'm like, oh, it wasn't so bad after all. Managing up, how well do you feel that you can manage up? You try.
Right.
So. Kyle and I can push back on each other and not be offended that we push back, which makes a big difference. I don't want to give the impression that I agree with him or he agrees with me all the time. But when we disagree, it's in that moment and then it's all. So be professional, be present. It is a workplace, you are being evaluated. Even though you are a student, you are being evaluated. I don't need to tell you this, but that's where a lot of this starts. I think in general, I've always been, this has been a sort of challenge in the coming back to work is how variable it is. So there used to be a time when I would come in, I always come in at the same time. And you could go into the office and you can you could go in and you'd find your group and you'd chat about something and everybody would be there, and how less often that happens now. So it really, then you kind of talk to the people who are there and then you kind of thought about something. So I would say be present. Just some things to fundamentally understand what most of your advisors want to talk about science. That's really all they want to talk. You do know that academia collects social misfits, right? Am I fair in saying that most of us would like really struggle in the real world? Send me to a PTA meeting and watch me. Oh. You want to come and manage up, you want to get my attention, bring me a paper and say, I read this, I thought you would like it, this is what they did. I'm like, okay, all yours, forget all the crap I was doing. I think we forget that sometimes. How many of you felt like you could do with more mentoring, or you're not getting what you want, or shared argument, whatever? But you recognize that people are there to discuss the scientific aspects, and that's how they see you in that lens, as scientists. And then if you're out of sight. Surprisingly, people notice when you walk in there. They're still looking. And, maintain boundaries, respect those boundaries. Big things, weddings, babies, everyone's happy to celebrate. But I don't tell you the crap that happened on my weekend. Maintain boundaries, respect boundaries, understand your group, right? But there are other groups that socialize a lot and understand where you come from, and then make your best effort in all your interactions. That way, when you do have a last minute request, which may be, hey, can you help me overcome this thing that the other person is not replying? You've earned your rapport and earned your credits, right? You have to pay attention to detail. I think it's basically things that, a lot of us have sort of lost that sort of communication thread of, if your group doesn't do work from home, then maybe you want to think about it. I get a lot of colleagues saying, the students said they're working from home, but what the heck are they doing? They're supposed to be doing experiments. What are they doing at home? I don't know. And that, I don't know part makes a lot of discomfort because nobody wants to come and ask you, what are you doing? We trust you, right? So, use your meeting times to make that impression that you want us to have. Come with slides. You don't want to read my handwriting. I don't want to read your handwriting. Sorry, Nate. And here's what I did last week. Here's what I read. This paper taught me this. This is what I want to do this week. I did not. People will say I read this paper and then I go, okay, so what? Right? Be able to, engage with me. And then here's my plan for next week. Guys, sloppy work, everyone notices. You make your lab meeting slides the night before, I know it. I bet you I know it. And somewhere it's being filed away to see what you do the next week. We all do. But I also want to tell you something that may not be obvious. The reverse of this. How good your slides are makes me want to talk about your stuff in seminars, even when it's unpublished. Also, when I ping you and say, I'm going to Johns Hopkins to give this seminar, can I get this slide that you showed in group meeting? And you tell me that it's going to take you 2 days? I've forgotten, I've finished my slides and I've moved on. It works both ways, you guys. We get to showcase this stuff, we get to put it in grants and do all of it. Help us, help you? You're writing a fellowship, you should know, the first thing you do is figure out what your letter requirements are and do that. Things that you can do on your time, you can do on your time. Help us help you. Then I can actually tailor your letter. What is it for? Oh, it's for the demon running. Is it for cancer or is it for the neuroscience thing? Okay, that's, let me go see what they funded before. So the background of what happens in writing a letter, I can tailor it. Who won it? Why are you competitive? Why are you even better than them? Ask me the night before, I'm going to take a letter I wrote for interfaces and, tag on a new date and send it. So help me help you make this happen. The way you do this, look around the group room, find a peer accountability partner. Right? You don't bring technical down a little bit of speed dating going on here. And the way we all have peer accountability partners. So I've written grants with your advisor. We basically say, this is the deadline. I'm going to Turkey. I'm going to India. This is how we will communicate. This is how we will make it happen. And we submitted something from the same childhood that you might be. And it works if you have shared interests and you can understand the pressures of a particular career stage. Or you may have the same life stage. But I think one thing that I did as a postdoc was I would have this one afternoon a week writing group. So you went in, it was mostly with humanities people, but they have to write books, right? To be considered serious people, scholars. You go in and you say, some coffee shop, you say, today I'm going to write introduction of whatever. They have no idea what you're talking about. And at the end of it, you say how far you got. And that's all you do. So, you have enough peers here. You can build your own little accountability and peer group. And I think a lot of it breaks down to not having this weird nebulous. What am I doing with my week and my time? I think really taking charge can help you achieve your goals or, figure out where you need help. But also maybe demystify some things. But one thing that I would say is attention has been a common challenge for a lot of us, just to keep attention, because it's very easy to. I've had to like really not do things during the day. I'm unable to. I go into this mode of, I came to this country for this science, I left my entire world behind, and oh my God, like, I just, means. Completely useless. It's not very adult. You guys got this. I'm happy to take any feedback, answer any questions. Or if you want to talk about specific things that are going to be, send me.
Did anybody speak if I turned off the recording?
All of it.